All right, welcome again, everybody. Thanks for coming on out this evening. It's going to be a great night. You'll learn a lot from Randall. He's got a great presentation on health here this evening. We are going to have another seminar on May 6th, and that one is going to be focused on golf, the Bionetics program. So Tuesday, May 6th, we're going to have another one of these. All part of the program here, working with Athletic Apex and our changes at the Racket Club of wellness, offering wellness, whether it be classes, seminars, presentations, all those types of things. So got a good night here tonight. Randall Hunt is here from Athletic Apex. Jeff Sanders as well as here with Athletic Apex, their team of trainers. Thanks, guys. Good to see you. We've got Nancy Murphy with Concert Golf Partners here as well from membership. Marie Gilma, our membership director, will be here soon. My name's Ryan Failer. I'm the GM here, and we're glad to have you. So, real quick, while we have everybody here, just a couple of notes on what's happening at the Racket Club right now. Starting tomorrow, we're going to be putting down flooring in the old tennis shop, and then working our way through the entire building, taking out the tile and the carpet, and putting down new flooring and receiving all new equipment. So next week we will have members will be able to work out over at Seminole Town Center, Athletic Apex. Their kids center is available as well, so that'll be a nice feature. We are planning April 22nd to be back open with all new equipment, and if it's any sooner than that, which we hope, we will let membership know and get going. So it's going to be looking really, really good as we get ready for Spring Fling, which is obviously our biggest event of the year at the Racket Club, and we want looking good for that. So a lot of great things. A new patio area by the new tennis shop. If you haven't seen the new tennis shop, it looks awesome. It's like a brand new store. We're doing all new sidewalk and pavers around the entire building in May, and we also are still, unfortunately, permitting is a little challenging, but we're close to being able to lock down the project of enclosing the new classroom space with the tinted glass and installing AC units. So a lot going on over at the Racket Club, our fitness club. Really going to be going through a rebranding and relaunching, and it's going to be a great summer. So we have some information here. If any of you don't have the classes and want to add that, we have forms for that. And other than that, I think we're set. Randall, I'll let you take it away.
Perfect.
It's great to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy. Testing. Can you guys hear me okay on this mic? Yeah. Is it better this way? You can be honest. All right, I'll just rock the mic again. All right, for those that don't know me, my name is Randall Hunt. I'm fired up here. I'm fired up to be here tonight. You guys, we're going to go pretty deep into health here. Some things that I'm going to bring up in this seminar are going to be the first time that you've heard probably in your life. And it's going to be extremely a lot of helpful information. So we're videoing this seminar because there may be some things that you might want to hear again or revisit. So don't worry about busting a notepad out. We're going to have this streamed for you. But a little bit more on me. My wife is here somewhere, me and our little son. We're the owners of Athletic Apex. We are a family-owned company. We are here. We took over the fitness center or the operations and the equipment at the Heathrow Club here. We're super excited about it. Our club, we have facilities in Texas, Florida, and New York. And actually today, we actually just signed we're actually going to have 2 clubs in New York now. As of today, we're in closing, so we're pretty excited about that. But more importantly, we are members of Heathrow Country Club. We've been members here for the last 4 years. We live here in the neighborhood. We were actually on the cover of Heathrow Living in October of last year. And what I'm really excited to bring to Heathrow is our biodetic programming, our biodetic training. So we have unique personal training, but we also have unique stuff like this, where it's just going to be informative, educational material. I actually created Bionetics several years ago while playing on a full ride a golf scholarship at Pepperdine University, I got into a car accident, and I lost the use of my right arm. And for 3 years, I was the highest paid player on the national championship team. So I was a pretty expensive horse to have lame. And I literally got sent around the world. I had multiple surgeries. I worked with only the best to try to get my arm to work again. And after 3 years of failed surgeries and failed rehab attempts, the doctors told me that I would never be able to use my arm again, and that I would have to accept a life of chronic pain. And I remember I was in Dallas, and the number one spine surgeon in the world, came up to me and he was like, "Randall, you'll never use your arm again. You have to accept a life of chronic pain." And I said, here's the prescription medicine program that you're gonna have to go on. And I'm like, "Hey, bro, I'm gonna be a junkie by the time I'm 30. And he goes, "Yeah, that's what this is." And so I said, I think the Lord's got something more for me and then being a junkie by the time I'm 30. So I just literally locked myself into medical libraries and learned everything that I could about nerve and muscle anatomy and muscle function and brain function to be able to heal myself. And I healed myself, and I actually I began playing professional golf. And I've won and played professionally around the world. But while I was out playing, I kind of had something was missing in me, because I learned some really unique intellectual property. And this voice in my head started saying, "Hey, well, what if I was able to use this unique intellectual property to help other people? How cool would that be?" So I took a year off of playing golf professionally, and I said, I'm just going to start my business and see how it goes. And then I'm going to get it going, and then I'm going to go back to playing golf professionally. And I started my business, and I never went back to playing because the fulfillment that I had from working with people and changing the lives of other people. This is actually me with a guy that medaled in the Olympics. He's an archer. My company has worked with all the organizations that you see up there. We've also worked with, we have the contracts for the University of Florida women's and men's golf team. My company's worked with winners on every major professional golf tour in the world. May 6th, as Ryan said, we have a seminar coming up that's golf specific. This is actually a picture of me and my New York club doing a golfnetic seminar, but you can see this seminar is going to be pretty hands-on. And what I'm going to do in this seminar, I worked with the highest ranked players in the world on the PGA Tour, and I learned some very unique things about what makes a good player a good player. And what that seminar is going to entail is how you can make your body closer to that of a PGA Tour professional to play better golf. We have a tennis program that does phenomenal. I've worked with some of the most prominent fitness models in the world. I've worked with everyday people. My wheelhouse is chronic pain. So my company in Texas, we have a contract with the largest hospital chain in the state of Texas called Texas Health. And they pretty much send people that they can't fix to me and to my guys. I'm actually here in Florida now, but my guys, I have a guy that's been with me 15 years there, and we have a staff. But our wheelhouse is fixing chronic pain and fixing neuromuscular dysfunction. As you guys know, I did the seminar here on January 29th. And we've actually had some people in the crowd here that are taking some of the bionetic programming. And we've actually had some success with people. This is Gary Bryant. Some of you guys might know him. He's actually in Israel right now with his wife Barbara, but he lost 15 pounds in his first 30 days, and he's hitting the golf ball 20 yards longer off the tee. We have Sheila. As you can see, Sheila was already in shape. I mean, she's phenomenal, but she's learned things that that she's never learned or never knew before, which has been amazing. Let me give some credit to my guys out of here. Colton actually works with Gary. And then Neil works with Sheila. That's Neil over there. This is Matt. Raise your hand, Matt. And then actually Jocelyn's here right now. She's got probably the coolest smile in the world. And she talked about, how the program has helped her back pain. And you were saying, and I talked to you the other day how you went to different physical therapists and chiropractors and how this has been such a big difference and it's helped your tennis game. We got Mike Grimm here. Mike's hitting the ball further. Mike was like a Navy SEAL when he came to us too. He was a gym rat, but he was cool in that, he learned a lot of things that he hadn't done or known it previously. Jim is actually living his best life right now. Him and his wife, Brenda, are in Rome. But Jim has lost 15 pounds with us and has improved his balance. We've got Catherine Milam. Her handicap has gone down. She's playing the best golf of her life, and she likes how her posture is feeling. We actually have Paula Grimm. You know, Paula she's hitting the ball a lot longer and more consistent. I'm going to wrap this up here. We got a lot of people that actually put in for this. Tammy Dalton, she's here. She shot one of the best scores of her life last week. She's hitting the golf ball 20 yards further. And this is actually probably one of the coolest guys in the room here, Steven, this guy. But he was, talked about, how Bionetics, he's doing things that he never imagined he'd be doing, and he's stronger and more flexible. And for some of you guys that are watching this online, these are just people that I saw in the club that just jumped out of my office. I don't want to think that if I didn't come up to you and talk to you about, hey, let's get a picture. But I'm pretty proud of the work that our specialists are doing. But now, let's jump into this seminar. I'm extremely excited about the Optimal Health Seminar. So if we're going to talk about optimal health, right, we first need to understand what health is. So we got a little treasure, but let's talk about health. If I asked you, pretty lady in the front, if I said, what's health? And there's no right or wrong answer. What would you say?
That's a hard question.
I'll come back to you.
Yeah, come back to me.
If I had to ask you what health is, what would you say?
Feeling good.
Feeling good. Great answer. If I had to ask you what health is, what would you say?
Our body functioning to its fullest potential.
Body functioning to its fullest potential. If I had to ask you what health is, what would you say?
Able to have a good quality of life.
Able to have a good quality of life. These are all great answers. But can you guys notice how all these answers are different? And remember when I asked you what health was, how you had to stop and think about that?
I was overthinking.
Right, but all of us, everyone, when you think about that, it's not an easy answer, is it? And I asked myself that question. So I said, if I'm going to own health clubs, and I'm going to be an expert in the fitness and health industry, I really need to know what health is. I need to be able to isolate and identify what health is. If you look at Webster's dictionary defines health as the state of being free from illness or injury. Hey, Jeff, can you come here and just move this podium back so my clicker works a little better? Thanks, bud. This is actually my COO. He's in town from New York. Everyone say hello to Jeff.
Hello, Jeff. Take this off, too. It's buzzing.
Okay.
Just put it in your pocket there.
So let's look at what Webster Dictionary is saying. It's saying the state from being free from illness or injury. So even Webster's Dictionary has a hard time defining what health is, because how you define something is by saying what it is. You don't say what it's not, right? I wouldn't say I wouldn't define a microwave as not being a refrigerator, right? And so by the Webster's Dictionary, this kid right here is the definition of health. He's not sick and he's not injured, right? At the same time, my clicker's going. At the same time, this girl right here is healthy, right? She's a definition of health. She's not sick and she's not injured. That's actually my wife, by the way. So we have two people with dramatically different looks from the outside, but they both fit the definition of health, according to Webster's Dictionary. So if we're looking to have better health, right, the question is, how do we manage health? Or how do we measure health? We can't manage something that we can't measure, right? So it's like you have to really get to the root and be able to define what something is to be able to effectively manage it. If I asked you what wealth is, all of you guys could give me a simple answer, right? If I said, what's financial wealth? You would say an abundance of money. It'd be a simple one. It'd be a simple answer. But if we're asking about what health is an abundance of what? So in my search for that answer, I found that in 2009, this group of scientists right here, they actually won the Nobel Prize for providing a definitive way to measure both health and aging in the body. And what they identified and what they found was that inside of our cells, so inside of our cells, these little crisscrosses right here are chromosomes. And can you guys see those little purple tips, little pink tips at the end of that chromosome? Those things are called telomeres. And what they found was those telomeres act like caps. Like, like a shoelace has a cap. And if the cap on the end of your shoelace came undone, then all of a sudden your shoelace would start unwinding, right? You guys kind of follow that logic? That's exactly how a telomere works. It's a cap that keeps your chromosome together. And what they found was as that telomere, the tip of that chromosome becomes smaller, we age and we become less healthy. That makes sense. So if we look at a human body here, a human body is composed of 100 trillion cells. So as our cells age, we age. As our cells die, we die, right? So then we also have these telomeres, or your chromosomes inside of these cells. So if we look and we see the telomere protects the chromosome is what's inside the cell. Can you guys see the lineage of how that affects the human body? So the key to this is to be able to protect, the key to life and really the key to health is to effectively manage your telomeres. So how telomeres work is when we're conceived, our telomeres are measured in slices, right? So when we're conceived, our telomeres are 15,000 bases. When it takes 3,000 bases to make a human, so when we're born, our telomere length is 12,000. When we get to 5,000, we die. So you're able to actually go through and look and see what your biological, we all have our chronological age, right? I'm 40. But all of our bodies have a biological age, and it's measured in these telomeres. So back in 2012, I really got into this, right? It was a breakthrough science, and my clientele in Texas has financial resources, which was great for me because a lot of this testing back then was a lot more expensive than it is today. And I actually drew the blood work on a lot of my clients, and I was able to look at the telomere length. And now the telomere length is, as you guys see that green square, so that line, that black line is the burn rate. And so if your telomere length is above that line, that means your telomeres are above the burn rate of where you should be, which is a good thing. If that square is below the line, that means you're premature. So remember I talked about we're born at 12,000. When we get to 5,000, we die. So you kind of have like an average burn rate of how your cells are aging. And you want to have your telomeres be as long as possible. So this is another one of my clients after working together who is extremely passionate about increasing his telomeres, but you can see where he scored on this graph. And he's actually, the bottom line, you can see the age. He was just under 40, but we were actually doing things to protect his telomere length. So telomeres have a link to pretty much every major disease. So heart disease, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, cancer, strokes, all of these things are directly related to telomere shortening. This is, listen to this.
Page around the corner, news tonight of a breakthrough for some pioneering mice. But we always wonder, what does a fountain of youth for rodents reveal for humans? Here's Sharon Alfonsi reporting.
In the movie Cocoon, it's a swimming pool that turns back the clock for a group of senior citizens. But now researchers have found a way not just to stop, but reverse the aging process. The key is something called a telomere. We all have them. They're the tips or caps of your chromosomes, seen here in yellow. This is what it looks like in a young adult. But as you grow older, the telomeres become damaged and frayed, and as they stop working, we start aging, experiencing things like hearing and memory loss. Scientists took mice who were prematurely aged, added an enzyme, and essentially turned their telomeres back on. You can see it before the enzyme, after.
Their brain function improved, their fertility was restored. It was a remarkable reversal of the aging process.
Look at this picture. The mouse on the right has bad skin, gray hair, and is balding. But the one on the left had its telomeres hooked back on.
And you can see that essentially you now have a dark coat color, that the hair is restored, that the coat has a nice healthy sheen to it.
Even more dramatic, the change in brain size. This is before the mice had 75% of a normal brain, like a patient with severe Alzheimer's. But after the telomeres were reactivated, the brain returns to normal size. As for humans, while it is just one factor, scientists now say by looking at our blood cells and measuring those telomeres, you can get a better idea of how well you age. The longer the telomere, the better the chances for a more graceful aging. Sharon Alfonsi, ABC News, New York.
Pretty cool, huh? So now let's ask the next question here. Jeff, we got whatever happened with that. But let's ask the question, why do we age? Right? So why do we age? Why do we get unhealthy as we get older? And the answer to that question is if we go back to look at original man, right? Original man, look at a caveman, we didn't have a way to mass produce food. We didn't have a way of mass transportation. So our species, in order for our species to survive, we had to get born, we had to grow to the age of sexual maturity, have a kid, and then get out of the way. So we literally have things in our body, once we get to the age of 30, when we reach sexual maturity, our cells start unwinding. And there are certain breakdowns that we have. It's our body's way of getting us off the face of the earth to be able to make room for the species. Does that make sense? Right? So think about that. As you get older and as you age, all of a sudden our eye goes bad or our vision goes bad. That was science, that was evolution's way of getting rid of us. If you can't see, guess what? You can't hunt. Guess what? A tiger comes after you in the jungle, you're probably not going to make it, right? But what do we do as humans? We evolve when we got glasses. We have ways to counteract that. So there's actually, and I have a slide, and if Jeff gets it, great. If not, but there's actually species on this earth that don't age. If you look at a lobster, right? Lobsters don't biologically age. Now, granted, lobsters aren't immortal, because we eat lobsters, they're great, right? But if you put a lobster in a self-contained environment, they just grow, and a lobster can grow to the size of a wolf. They can get 50, 60 pounds, but their brain function increases as time goes. Their sexual fertility increases as time goes. They become stronger. They get better over time. We also have things. There's also the bowhead whale does the same thing. Turtles, clams, or certain species of turtles. And this thing right here is pretty cool. This thing right here, the Pteropodus dohrnii, it's a jellyfish found off the coast of Japan. And they're actually asexual. And what they do is they flap around and time starts passing, and they literally wrap themselves up and rebirth themselves to infancy. And they learn how to eat, they learn how to swim, they learn how to do all this stuff all over again. And they actually have cults that worship these things because they just go over time, and they're very small. But it's pretty cool that we do have species on this earth that are wired dramatically different than we are. And a big reason why the lobster, a big reason why these things they grow and they don't age like we do, is they produce this enzyme called telomerase. And this telomerase enzyme is an enzyme that actually protects and grows the telomeres. Does that make sense? Am I losing anybody? We're kind of going a little sciencey here, but that's how this is working. So if we're looking at, remember we talked about, and I started off, let's bottom line it. What is health, right? There's so many things that are out there that say health is this, health is that, health is this. It can be confusing. But if you really want to look at the nuts and bolts of what health is, bottom line, health, being this thing that's healthy is anything that slows the burn of a telomere. And anything that's unhealthy is something that's going to speed up the burn of a telomere. Does that make sense? Right? So if we're looking at, we're going to talk about, and we kind of hinted about it, about living longer and how to scientifically lengthen your lifespan. So the key to lengthening our lifespan, the key to living longer, the key to reverse aging is to protect our telomeres. Now, what if I told you guys that there's something out there that could lengthen your telomere? Be pretty cool, huh? Right? So there's actually 6 different labs right now around the country that are on the race to find the pharmaceutical answer to lengthening your telomeres. And when they find this hit, it's going to be the biggest breakthrough of mankind. And this is something you can literally smoke, drink, whatever you want to do. Your telomere is not going to shorten. It's going to be ridiculously cool for everyone. But there's actually something now that has been proven to increase telomere length that's natural. There's something called TA65. And this supplement actually has, it's a TA65 molecule that's found in astragalus root. And astragalus root is found in China, and they found a way to extract this molecule at extremely high doses to be able to lengthen telomeres. And they did a study, and for me, I'm a big data guy. Like, I got to see, some serious results. And their study showed they did 117 people over a 12-month period. And they took, they did their base group, and the base group of the study showed that the people that did not take it, their telomeres shortened between a range of 290 and 110. So what that means in this study, the person out of all these people that lost the most, they lost 290 bases in that 12-month period. The person that lost the least was 110. The people that did take the TA65, they all lengthened. The person that lengthened the least amount was 180 bases. The person that lengthened the most was 530 bases. So that's pretty cool. That study just came out. It was actually done in a controlled group in Spain, but it's pretty cool to see what you can actually do. And granted, TA65 is one of many things that are coming out now that the science is breaking through when you're actually looking at everything into maximizing your health. So that's great. That's a supplement. But now let's talk about things that actually cause a telomere to shorten. And the 3 biggest factors that cause a telomere to shorten are oxidation, glycation, and inflammation. These are all things that we can control. So I'm going to go through the detail of these, but I want you guys thinking this way, right? Glycation, or oxidation, glycation, inflammation, these are all things that have been proven to dramatically shorten a telomere. So if we're able to manage these things, we can manage the shortening of the telomere. And if we're managing the shortening of the telomere, we're managing our health. Does that make sense in terms of actually truly getting healthier? So let's start with oxidation. This guy right here is actually in 1931, he won the Nobel Prize. He proved the cause of cancer. And the cause of cancer is oxygen leaving the cell. So if cancer is caused by oxygen leaving a cell, then if oxygen doesn't leave the cell, right? That's going to make us pretty resilient to cancer. If you look at oxidation, you guys have seen it before. You know, when you take an apple and you cut an apple in half, the oxidation process starts, right? Oxygen starts leaving those cells, and you can see the same thing happens, when you smoke. Like, smoking is one of the things that oxidize. It takes oxygen out of our cells. And it's one of the biggest reasons why when you look at someone that's a smoker, if you look at this picture here, these are actually identical twins. Can you see how much different the twin on the right looks than the twin on the left? And the reason why is she's blowing through her telomere count significantly faster from the oxidation. And how our cells work in our body, and as we age, as our skin becomes less elastic, the reason that does is because our body kills off things that are furthest away from our organs. So our weakest cells, it's going to push the weakest cells out on the outside and let those die, and it'll slowly start working into hanging on because its ultimate objective is to keep us alive. So there's also things that if we want, smoking's an obvious one, but eating things that are acidic is a major deal that actually takes oxygen out of the cell. Artificial sweeteners is a massive one. When I look at the effects, I literally stopped drinking soda when I saw the effects of soda and the oxidation process and the acidity it has on the body. One of the things that killed me was I loved ribeye steaks. Like, I was a ribeye guy. My wife would tell you, I go to a restaurant, what's the biggest ribeye you got? That's me. And so I switched to a sirloin when I just saw the acidity level of a ribeye steak. And obviously, we know that alcohol's got an acidity process to it. And it doesn't mean that you could never have any of these things, but we need to recognize their properties and how their properties affect our health. Now, obviously, if things are acidic, there's things that we can eat that have antioxidant principles to them that can help protect ourselves. So we have things like carrots, turmeric is a great one, green tea, onions, apples, broccoli, all of these things with antioxidants help protect ourselves. There are supplements out there that protect ourselves. This is just a good one you guys can find on Amazon.com called Protandem. And it's a great antioxidant. What they do is basically take high doses of different antioxidant properties from food, chop them up and put them together in pills, so you don't have to worry about getting it through your food. So what you want to look at in terms of oxidation is something called ORP, which is it's an oxidation reduction potential. And when you look at that and we break down foods or we break down substances, the higher the number, the worse. So if something has a 400 ORP rating, it's literally 4 times more oxidating than something that has a 100 ORP rating. So if we look at these drinks here, coffee has a plus 175, soda's got 410, Powerade got 438. As a mid typo, but I mean that's bottled water is plus 295. And then orange juice is 200, and tap water ranges between 300 and 500, depending on your filtration system. So one of the things, if you just look at science, that has the best way, if you want to protect your body from oxidation, is actually drinking ionized water. And one of the filters of drinking ionized water is this thing. The best one that I've seen on the market is one made by Tyant. And it's got its plates. I actually endorse them. I'm a distributor for them, but it's not the only one out there. There's plenty of ones out there, but how this one works, or how ionizers work in general, is it has a positive and a negative plate that the water actually runs through, which splits the water molecules. So in the water molecules, we all know that water is H2O, right? And so what it does is it actually splits and makes the water molecules smaller. So drinking one bottle of Tyant water, or water from an ionizer of its caliber, is like drinking 8 bottles of water in terms of hydration. And the ORP property, you guys saw that chart that I showed you there. Tap water is between 300 and 500. 1 glass of Tyant has an antioxidant of negative 1050. So it's literally 1,000 times stronger at protecting your body from oxidation. Now, there's a lot of different ionizers out there. There's some that are not very expensive that you can get that have a negative 300 to 500, which are awesome. This is just kind of the Ferrari of ionizers. But it's just to be aware, if we're looking at protecting our body from oxidation, the easiest way you can do it, if you don't want to worry about, as much as your food and everything else, the way you can get a ton of protection is by drinking ionized water. The next one we're going to go to is glycation. Okay, glycation is how our body processes sugar. Now, glycation, this guy right here, you see in the picture, his name's Leonard Hayflick. And what he created and what he found was something called the Hayflick limit, which is he found that there's a limited amount of times that cells can split. So how cells work in the body is, if I were to cut myself right now, my body would send skin cells to my cut. And it would form to my body, it would create skin, and then once my cut healed, they would stop making skin cells. And based on my DNA code, they would form to the pigment of my skin. If I had heart issues, my body would create heart cells. If I had brain issues, my body would create brain issues. So what he discovered was there's a limited amount of times these cells can split. So if we know that our body is made up of 100 trillion cells, and after all of these cells split and are done splitting, when those cells age and those cells die, that's when it's lights out for us. Does that make sense? So we want to minimize the amount of splitting that has to occur in our body. And one of the ways that we can do this is by managing our sugar intake. So this little yellow dot that we have here. So when a molecule of sugar comes into the body, it's useless. It sends our brain gets a signal to our pancreas to secrete insulin to be able to absorb the sugar molecule and use it for energy. Now, insulin is extremely toxic in the body. You can kill yourself by injecting insulin into you, in a large amount. So what our body does, our body creates these canisters to go in there and collect all the excess insulin to make sure that there's no excess insulin. And our body always creates more canisters to collect than is needed. And these little canisters are called adipocytes. And adipocytes are fat cells. So think about that, okay? So we have a sugar molecule that goes in. Insulin has to be secreted for us to be able to use it for energy. We have to have canisters to catch that excess insulin. If we want to minimize our body creating fat cells, we have to minimize the need for fat cells to be created. Does this slide make sense to you guys? Kind of the cause and effect? So that's one of the reasons why they prove. When's the last time you saw someone that was obese that was 80 years old? Think about that. How many obese, when you see a 90-year-old that's walking around, they're not obese. Think about that. And the reason why is because there's premature cellular division. So we look at someone that's obese and you go, oh my gosh, they're unhealthy. And they died because they had health problems. But it's not that. As they ran, when the time came for them to need heart cells created, they ran out. When the time came to whatever that was wired to get them off the face of the earth, we all have something that's wired in our DNA code. Remember I talked about the caveman deal? All of our cells, and this is just natural, it's just part of life, it is what it is. But we all have something that's wired for us to get us to move on. But that's great. As long as we're protecting our cells, we can delay that as long as possible, if that makes sense. So protecting ourselves, this is actually a little funny slide that I put in here. If you see this lady, she's kicking the burger and kicking the sweets. But it's not that you can never partake in those things, but it's just that you want to just understand the effect that they have on our cells. Eating things that turn to sugar quickly are things that are going to affect our cellular division. Eating things that turn to sugar slowly, like these more complex carbs, are things that are going to protect our cellular count. Now, if we're looking at cellular protection, the outside of our cells is made up of fat. And this is why one of the reasons that eating enough essential fat, eating enough things that are avocado, or walnuts, olive oil, eating these things are essential in protecting our cellular health. And what we've seen with people that come in that we assess, this is one area that they miss. They don't eat enough essential fats. And enough essential fats and everyone's based on your height and your weight, but on average, the average woman should be around 60 grams a day, and the average male should be around 90 grams a day of essential fat. And people that partake in our Bionetic nutrition program, we have a machine that reads all of this for us. You breathe into a hose, it measures the amount of oxygen and carbon dioxide coming out of your body, and we're able just to pinpoint exactly what your body needs from a nutrition standpoint. And some of you guys are in here already doing the programming with my wife, Stevie, and she basically just puts all this stuff together for you so you don't have to think about it. So you come in, you breathe into this machine, the acidity levels, the glycation levels, based on everything you need, she pretty much just dumps it down for you. I know Gary and Barbara, they eat out a lot, so what she did for them was she just found the restaurants that they eat out the most, and we're like, eat this on the menu, eat this, order that, which just makes it easy for you. But even if you don't partake in the nutrition aspect of things, understanding when you're ordering, paying attention to these things will definitely help you preserve your telomere length, preserve your cells, preserve your health. Now this last one, inflammation, is probably the most dramatic in killing telomere length. And when I was, and I still do, and we still do in Texas, but I would notice patterns in my clients where I was measuring their telomeres to see who was the lowest. Like what patterns, what kind of person was the lowest. And the lowest people that I saw, the lowest person that I ever measured was one of my clients who was a Red Bull X Games guy. He was 26 years old, and he was biologically 60. And the reason why he was biologically 60 was because this guy broke almost every bone in his body, right? So remember we talked about the Hayflick limit and Leonard Hayflick in the cells and cellular division? He had to form a lot of bone, which is extremely expensive, right, in terms of your cellular count. Forming fat is one thing, that's soft, but having to actually form bone structure, and so for him, I had to sit him down in my office, and I'm like, hey, this is where we're at, bud, and this is, we need to be on the water ionizer, we need to be all these things, but I'm like, you're extremely exposed right now at 26. And he was a smart kid. We were actually able to get his score up, which was great. But I'd see NFL players that got hit a lot. I mean, it was just there's a direct correlation to inflammation and a premature cellular burn. And there's another thing, this slide right here, if you guys kind of look at the knee joint, it's kind of what I was talking about earlier. For having to form, tissue structures, it takes a ton of cells to be able to do that. Watch this short video right here. This is actually a client of mine that had some issues with inflammation due to some joints being misaligned that wore on his bones.
Jerry, good morning. This is Dr. Yates, Carl Yates. We're looking in this left shoulder. We're looking from the back to the front, from posterior to anterior. This needle's coming in the front of your shoulder just above the biceps tendon. This is the biceps right here. It attaches to the top of the glenoid via this big labrum or cartilage, which is quite irregular and ragged here. You've got a lot of redundancy in this cartilage that's sort of being frayed here. Now this is your humeral head to the left. The glenoid or the socket is down here below. One thing I want to show you here is you've got quite a bit of arthritis in this shoulder. A normal shoulder should be nice and smooth and pristine, sort of like this small area right here. You can see down here the glenoid is very rough, very cobblestone-y down in here. You can see the yellowish degeneration on the glenoid, how rough it is, and then look on the humeral head. See here, as I rotate the humeral head, you've got a huge, huge area of arthritis there. As I spin your arm around, see it's down to bone right there. And Jerry, this is a bad, bad problem because you've rubbed down to rough bone on your humeral head. This doesn't even have anything to do with your rotator cuff. It's just due to abuse of the shoulder over many, many years from your weightlifting and your training. So regrettably, we can't do a thing about that. That's just raw bone rubbing on the glenoid. You can see as I rub it back and forth. We can't resurface that at all. Now you do have a lot of debris in this shoulder that we're going to clean up. I'm going to polish this cartilage tear up in here. I'm going to trim the cartilage down here inferiorly as well. We'll put a shaver in and tidy this up. But you can see that this shoulder has just realized too many miles, too much stress over the years, because this is the worst part of it right here. But no matter what we do to your rotator cuff, you're going to have achy, deep, aching pain in the shoulder every day of your life because of this bone rubbing on joint surface. Now, the rotator cuff is a whole different problem unrelated to your arthritis. This is the rotator.
So we definitely don't want to end up like Jerry, right? So that was a good lesson. The cool thing about Jerry is I was actually able to get Jerry symptom-free. But you could see the expense that Jerry had by those joints wearing irregularly. And those of you guys that are doing our biodetic training, you know why our specialists put you on the table and look at your range of motion before every session, and afterwards put you on the table and look at your range of motion on every session, is to make sure that we're ensuring that we work within the parameters of your body and making sure that your joints are aligned. Because if your joints are not aligned and there's excessive rubbing, we know the expense that has on your body. Does that make sense to you guys? So exercising properly is extremely important. Not just, most people just think exercise, I went to the gym, I checked in today, awesome. That doesn't necessarily mean that you moved your body in the right direction. So let's talk about some ways that we can avoid excessive wear and tear on the body and avoid inflammation. And one of the ways that we can do this is by not working out on biomechanically incorrect equipment. And here's the great thing for you guys. Heathrow has none of that. So if you go to the Heathrow gym, you go to Heathrow Fitness sitting there, you're dialed in, you're good. And I should say, actually right now, maybe not so, but next week when the equipment comes in, all the new stuff, they're literally, it's the best equipment, it's the best biomechanically correct equipment for you. And this machine actually here, the reason why on this one, if you guys look at that little circle in the back there, if you guys look, those circle in the back, it's called a cam. And how you actually propel that elliptical trainer is by pushing your foot forward. When you walk, there's no resistance when your foot goes forward. It's only resistance when your foot moves backwards. But when you push your foot forward, it actually causes shear force on your patella. There's a lot of times that people have been on these backloaded ellipticals, and they, their knees hurt, their joints hurt, but it creates inflammation. It's poorly designed. And I say that, the one that you see on the left is absolutely perfect. And I might be a little biased in saying that because I was the one that designed it. But it's the arc trainer, there's absolutely no resistance on your upstrike. All the load and all the resistance is on your downstrike of where it should be. And we have this machine, we have several of these coming to the fitness center. Another one is, let me go back to this one here. If you guys are traveling, and some of you guys may have homes other places for the summer, and if you guys see a backloaded elliptical machine, don't get on it. Save yourself the inflammation. Jump on a recumbent bike, or jump on a bike, or jump on something that they do have. But I'm just saying that to you, it's just not worth the expense on the picture of your body, big picture. There's machines, like one of the things that I actually designed this leg press that's going to be in the center. And one of the cool things about this leg press is it moves on an arc, so it actually moves with the contours of your body. It takes all the pressure off your lower back and facet joints. Machines that don't move, where the rod is actually level, or some of the leg presses actually goes up, you're actually pushing into your joints, which can cause inflammation, which is not good. So, rule of thumb, if you're working out and you're exercising, if something hurts, don't do it, right? All the raw, it hurts, dig in, dig deep, push through it, that is not what you need to do for your body. And then let's just say that you don't have a range of motion assessment to really dial in the specifics of the parameters of your body. Use common sense. When I say use common sense, if you're standing here and you can only raise your arm this high, don't go into a machine that requires you to have your arm up here, because you don't have that range of motion. The only way that you're going to get in that range of motion, if you just stand here and this is all of the flexion you have in your shoulder, is to shift in your shoulder socket. So now I'm shifted in my shoulder socket and I'm loading myself in my shoulder socket in a shifted position. That's going to cause irregular wear and tear on my joint. Right? So when you're sitting down, before you jump on the machine, just kind of do a check and see, do I have this range of motion that this machine is requiring me to have? And these are all things that are going to add to your health. Does that make sense to you guys? You guys know when I'm saying health, I'm talking about preventing cellular division, which shortens telomeres, which weakens cells, which makes us unhealthier. That little chain following make sense? Yeah? Cool. Another thing that you guys can do or pay attention to is if you have shoulder problems, right? Now, if you have shoulder problems, you want to stay away from the exercises like the one on the left. And the reason why I say that, that's a closed chain exercise. And what I mean by a closed chain exercise, when you're doing a push-up, my hand is on the wall. Imagine me being on the floor, right? So as I go down in this movement, any deviation that I have, the bailout's going to happen inside the joint. My hand's going to stay fixed, and the bailout's going to happen inside the socket of my joint, which is going to cause irregular wear and tear. If I'm using a dumbbell like the one over here, and there's a deviation that I can bail out, so that the load isn't actually happening inside the socket, I can actually move to a place that's safe for my body. So we have, with what we do with our training, so we have a pretty extensive range of motion assessment that we have to be able to find out what the exact parameters of your body are from head to toe, and our programming is based on that as well. But if you do not go through one of these range of motion assessments, keep in mind the last two things that I was telling you about there. Now let's talk about increasing the lifespan of your body, right? This is my goal in life right here. If you guys see this guy, he's about 80 years old, water skiing. For me, we talked about telomeres and we talked about protecting your cells. And that's going to keep your organs, that's going to keep your body, that's going to keep you above ground longer. But for me, it's not just about being above ground, it's about having a great quality of life above ground. I want to be, I'm 40 years old, I have a son that's 18 months. I want to be there for my grandkids, right? And for me, starting at 40, I gotta make sure that I'm not prematurely splitting here, right? I gotta make sure that I maintain my health for that. But also, I also want to make sure that I'm jumping in the back seat of my son's sports car, whatever it is, that I'm active, that I'm able to actively and vigorously be part of his life. And that has to do with preserving this right here. We only get one of these. This is the structure of our body. And how preserving this works is understanding muscle function. So we have this structure here, which is bones, right? We have joints. We have muscles that attach to these bones and these joints. And over the course of our life, there's three things that cause a muscle to be disconnected from our brain, or the connection between our brain and our muscle to get hindered. It's stress, trauma, and overuse. And we all have these neuromuscular imbalances as we get older because guess what? We live life. We've done things. We've took falls. We've, played basketball. We've been active. We wound up in certain ways in golf. There's going to be some things that get disconnected from our brain, which is fine. But being able to understand what's disconnected or what connections are hindered and correcting those imbalances is what's going to keep the frame of this together. Does that make sense? So we have muscles that control the alignment of this. If the connection between the brain and those muscles gets altered, those muscles are going to sit at a different length, which are going to move this structure around. And the movement of this structure around is what's going to cause irregular wear and tear. That irregular wear and tear is going to cause cellular division, and you guys know where that story goes from there, right? So protecting this is huge. And this is what I'm an expert in. This is what my guys are expert in. And it's kind of a market or a world of its own. Remember I told you the story about when I was in a car accident, I lost the use of my arm? I had severe neuromuscular dysfunction. And guess what? Neuromuscular dysfunction doesn't show up in blood work. Neuromuscular dysfunction doesn't show up on an X-ray machine. It doesn't show up on a CT scan. It doesn't show up on an MRI. So an MRI for neuromuscular dysfunction did not exist, so I created one. And that's how I fixed myself, and that's how we fix thousands of people through my company, is by understanding neuromuscular dysfunction. So I'm going to do a pretty lady right here in the white pants. You mind coming up here for a second? I'm going to show you guys real quick about the muscle-brain connection here, okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to bring your arm out here, to stand right here. I'm going to turn your arm in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to press down this way, and you're not going to let me, okay? So I'm going to press down, you press up. Keep this elbow turned in for me. Ready, and resist. Okay, can you guys see how she can't hold me there? Try it one more time. Ready, and resist. Okay? So now all I want you to do is keep your elbow turned in, and I want you to press up to the ceiling for 6 seconds. So keep pressing up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Relax. Good. Just relax your arm here. I'm going to retest you. Okay, I'm going to press down. You're going to press up. Ready, and resist. See how you can hold me now? Good, relax. And you guys, I'm pushing, right? Ready, and resist. So you guys see how quick that muscle turned back on? We do the same thing through exercise and load, but I also want to show you how sensitive this is. All right, so you guys see how she can hold me, ready, and resist? Right? I want to show you how sensitive this can be to get a muscle to shut off. Okay, I'm right here. Don't let me push down. Ready, and resist. See how she can't hold me? Ready, and resist. Right? Don't let me push down. Ready, and resist. See how you can hold?
Yeah.
So you guys see, everyone, let's give her a round of applause for coming up and being a trooper for that. So muscle sensitivity, muscles are extremely sensitive in how they work. And understanding those properties and understanding which muscles are strong and which muscles are weak are how you correct neuromuscular dysfunction. So there was a muscle that lays on top of your shoulder called your infraspinatus. It was off. And then, I just did a little isometric press that activated your brain. I forced your brain to have to talk to that tissue, which is why I came back on strong. And then I did something that's very complicated and pushing on your nose in a certain way to shut that muscle off, just to kind of make a point. But my point is this stuff's very sensitive, right? So getting a muscle to turn on, how you get a muscle to stay on is by actually properly applying load to that muscle fiber. And I say load resistance. Load as a mechanical load, weight, is how you're able to build that muscle from the inside out. So one of the things that causes a lot of pain and a lot of issues for people is when the muscles around the pelvis get shut off. So when the muscles around the pelvis, and I've fixed some pretty dramatic chronic pain stuff just by working on the muscles in the pelvis. And I'm talking about chronic neck pain, chronic jaw pain, chronic shoulder pain, chronic wrist pain. And the reason why that is the majority of the musculature in your body attaches to your pelvis. So if your pelvis is out of alignment, the joints above the pelvis and the joints below the pelvis basically almost have no chance of being in alignment, right? So if this thing rotates to the left here like this bone's not going to sit in the socket like it needs to be. This bone is going to get twisted, and then your ribs actually countershift, and all of these things are going to be out of alignment. Does that make sense? And some of you guys that have been in for your biokinetic assessment, I really showed it in depth. But one of the main things that you have to have, and you're talking about flexibility, this is one of the biggest things that you can do to improve your golf game. So, and actually your tennis game as well, because it's going to get your body more mobility. Do you guys notice on those testimonials that we had up there? People were saying, yeah, I lost 15 pounds. Yeah, I have more energy. But you notice how many people say they're hitting the golf ball further? It's because the way that we're correcting the imbalances in their body, working through their pelvis, we're getting them more mobility in pretty much every place in their body. So I'll give you, let's see here, Stephen's wife. You mind coming up here for a second? Everyone, let's give Stephen's wife a round of applause for being a trooper. So I'm going to make a point here in regards to range of motion. Go ahead and have a seat here, facing out this way. Go ahead and I'm going to put, just so you guys can have a visual on how much she's rotating, just go ahead and hold on to this for me here. So just put it on your arms like this. Hold it in you.
Hold my arms.
Yes. So go ahead and cross your arms, just put it in there like that. Perfect. Okay? So go ahead and rotate around to your right. You guys can kind of see what that looks like. Good. Back out here. Scoot back just a touch from where so your knees are touching this table here, so we make it consistent. Let's go ahead and rotate around to your right again. You guys have an idea what that is there? Good. Come back out here. Go ahead and rotate around to your left. Good. Come back out. Okay. Go ahead and lay on your back with your head down here. Good. Let me see. Just go ahead and turn this left knee in for me here. And what was your name again?
Sharon.
Sharon. Perfect. Turn this knee in here. And Sharon, we haven't met before, right? This isn't like a stage situation. All right. Just go ahead and relax your arm here and just let your arm fall down. Just relax your arm there. Can you guys see how our arm here in this position doesn't quite, this bone right here, doesn't quite go all the way down level to the table? Yes, we see that? Okay. I'm going to bring you back here. Just relax this arm here. Go ahead and bring this arm down. Can you guys see how this arm, you probably can't see this arm, but this arm's level to the table on this side. And what you guys can't see is this knee is turning in more than this knee, which means that our pelvis is rotated. Go ahead and lay on your stomach for me. I'm going to take a look at a few muscles that attach to your pelvis. Go ahead and bend your knee here. Go ahead and lift your knee off the table. Good. You guys can get a visual on how high she's lifting that knee. Back down here. I'm going to bring you out this way here. Go ahead and lift your knee off the table here. You guys have a visual, right, of what that looks like? I'm going to bring you back out straight. This is actually my first time doing this with the microphone. It's pretty cool. Go ahead and lift your knee up here. You guys have a visual on how high that is? Good. Go ahead and lift your knee up here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate a few muscles that are glutes. So the glute muscle, it's actually not just a glute. There's several different fibers of the glute muscle. It's got an iliac fiber, a coccygeal fiber, a sacral fiber. It's a complex here, even though some people think it's just one muscle. It's not. So what I want you to do is I'm just going to keep my hand here. Go ahead and lift your knee to the ceiling for 6 seconds. Keep pressing up to the ceiling, up, 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 up. Good, and relax. Come back down. Good. On your own now, go ahead and lift this knee up as high as you can. Can you guys see the difference there in the range of motion? Back down, we'll do the same thing on this side over here. Bend this knee here. Go ahead and lift your knee up. Good, keep pressing up. Keep pressing up. Up to the ceiling, up to the ceiling. Good, you felt that kick in right there? Good, back down. Good. On your own now, go ahead and lift your knee up as high as you can. You guys see the difference there in the range of motion? Good, do me a favor here. Go ahead and lay back down on your back. And we're going to take a look at this shoulder over here on this side. Just relax your arm here. Good. Just go ahead and let your arm fall down. Can you guys see our arm is falling down lower now? Right? Just off that little simple play with the glutes. Go ahead and sit up for me with your legs over the side of the table. And scoot back to where your knees are there. Go ahead and hold on to this the same way that you were. Good. Go ahead and rotate around to your right as far as you can. Can you guys see how much further this is turning here? Back out here. Go ahead and rotate around to your left. Keep turning as far as you can. Can you guys see how much further we're going there? Good. Everyone, let's give her a round of applause. Terrific. So my point is in that, and that was a little hopscotch 15-second deal, but the reason why her arm fell lower was because her pelvis was actually rotated to the left, and when her pelvis rotated to the left, her ribs countershift this way. Our body moves topsy-turvy like this. If it didn't, we'd walk in circles. So when her ribs got shifted the other way, this humerus, the head of this bone, wasn't sitting in the socket correctly. So when we activated those two muscles on each side of her pelvis became more stable. And granted, there's a lot more things I would activate if she was coming in that would increase the range of motion more. But her pelvis came back to neutral, which forces her ribs to come back into a better alignment, which better aligned this bone here, which is why that bone fell all the way down. Does that make sense? Kind of seeing the systematic sequence there. So that complex and people having weak glute muscles, or I should say an unstable pelvis or a misaligned pelvis, is one of the biggest things that kills golf games. It's one of the biggest things that kills tennis games. It's one of the biggest things that creates shoulder pain. You guys saw how that shoulder was sticking, right? Her shoulder sticking up there is irregular wear and tear, right? Now, she may not be symptomatic, but that joint is not in alignment. If you look at joints in terms of like relative to like a car, right? A car that is in alignment is going to stay on the road longer than a car that's not in alignment. That makes sense? 200,000 miles on a car that's in alignment versus 200,000 miles. I mean, it's probably not going to make it that far because the suspension, the tires, the joints, the bolts, everything are having external stress on it. So in that picture, in that first slide that I showed you guys about the guy water skiing at 80, in order for me to get there, in order for us to get there, we want to have our car, our structure in alignment so we get the most good mileage out of it, if that makes sense. All right? So one of the biggest things too, and then just you guys are understanding neuromuscular dysfunction, and we have some amazing equipment coming to the Heathrow Fitness Center to help be able to isolate this tissue as well. But in our day-to-day life, when we walk, my leg is moving forward in front of me, right? If I wanted to go back to the table, I wouldn't do this, right? If I wanted to go back to the table, I would turn and keep everything moving in front of me. And what happens is very seldom are we actually forcing our leg, our femur, or this bone right here to go into extension. So these muscles don't actually grab the way that they should grab. And our brain, the connection between our brain and that tissue diminishes over time. And so we're stronger here, we're weaker here, which actually pulls our pelvis this way. And some of you guys might have heard a chiropractor or someone tell you, hey, you have an anterior pelvic tilt. It's extremely common, and one of the biggest things that causes back pain is when your pelvis actually tilts forward. Can you guys see these little vertebrae that are right here? And I'll try to do this with the microphone. So our pelvis's job is to hold this structure up, right? Hold the structure of our spine up. If we have weak glutes and the muscle can't contract on the backside of this bone, what happens is our body rolls our pelvis forward to bring these bones. Can you guys see where my thumb is right here? To bring these bones closer together in alignment to create a pivot point to hold this spine up. And these bones down here are called our facet joints. This is one of the biggest causes of sciatic pain because that sciatic nerve comes out of this L4, L5 vertebra in your back and runs down through your piriformis muscle or deep glute muscle. But having a weak glute structure is one of the things that brings these bones closer together and causes back pain, causes sciatic issues, and causes irregular wear and tear, bulging discs. I don't know even though I'm trying to do this with a mic, but some of you guys in the back, maybe you guys can see it. But we want to have a strong glute. We want to have a strong backside here to be able to hold and have a good foundation here. And to be able to get strong glutes requires a decent skill set, or to be mindful of a lot of things that we think would get our glutes, like doing a squat. When I do a squat like this, there's a lot of other motions, a lot of other pieces of tissue that are showing up to that party. When I do a squat like this, my leg is extending, which is using my quad muscle. When I squat like this, my foot is pushing down in plantar flexion, which is using my calf muscle. When I squat like this, I'm using my spinal erectors to extend me. When I squat like this, I'm using my rhomboids to retract my shoulders to help me get up. So you can see in the sequence of all of those things that are showing up in that one movement, if I've got really strong quads, guess what? My glutes can hide. If I got really strong calves, guess what? My glutes can hide. So it's really as a science and picking exercise and movements that force that glute to have to engage on its own. And there's a whole series, right? There's over 800 muscles relative to skeletal movement. We go through about 200 in our assessment when we go through assessing you to look at your bone structure or your joint alignment. But the glute one, if you guys take that away from this seminar of just understanding how important it is to have an inline pelvis and the muscles that attach to our pelvis working properly. If you guys look at the slide here, some people just think that it's glutes. We actually have a muscle called our glute medius. There's a muscle that's the iliac fibers, the top part of our glute, sacral fibers. You guys can see all of the different things that make up this glute complex. There's actually a muscle that's missing on there too that I'm just seeing that I forgot to label. There's a lot of things that go on that glute complex to make it good. So this chart right here is something that we do with our clients. We do a screening where we go through and we do a bunch of muscle testing where we can go through and test all the muscles of your pelvis to see which ones are strong, which ones are weak. One of the things that I want you guys to be mindful of is to be cautious when stretching. So some of you guys, how many of you guys have heard stretching is good for health? Right? Everyone's heard stretching is good for health. So let's look at what stretching actually is. First of all, Mike, how much has your range of motion changed since working with us? And how much stretching do we have you do? Right? So he's got 50% increase in his range of motion. He does zero stretching. And I'm going to talk to you about how we do that and why we do that. But first, let's go back to our good friend Webster's Dictionary. Right? If you look at Webster's Dictionary and you look up the definition of stretch, it's the ability to change length. So what stretching is, if I had a silly putty in my hand, and I pulled that silly putty here, now that that putty went from being 6 inches to 12 inches, right? It actually changed length. If our muscles did that, we would be a bag of bones on the floor, right? Our muscles return to their original size. Like they extend, but they come back. They don't change length. Does that make sense to you guys? So just by definition, when we pull on ourselves and we're doing this, we're not stretching, right? We're pulling on ourselves because our muscles don't stretch. They actually did a study on a cadaver where they took a bicep muscle and they hung a 45-pound plate on it for 3 years. And they took that 45-pound plate and it returned to its original length within a centimeter. So if a 45-pound plate hanging on there for 3 years is not going to change the length of that muscle, you doing this for 20 seconds is not going to change the length of that muscle, right? So one of the things I want you to be conscious of, we're going to get a little sciencey here, but muscles have something called a GTO, which is a Golgi tendon organ. And what it is, it's a sensor that attaches to the muscle to let the brain know how much tension is on that muscle. And so when you're pulling on yourself, right, and your brain is saying, hey, don't let that muscle snap, it'll send a signal to that muscle to get that muscle to give out, right? And that's how your range of motion increases, is because you're putting pressure on that GTO. Now, guess what? In order for us to be able to move great in golf, in order for us to be able to move great in tennis, in order for our joints to be able to hold good alignment, we don't need our brain shut off from muscles, right? We want our brain connected to as much muscle tissue as possible. Does that make sense? And you guys can kind of digest that nugget, because I know a lot of people are hardcore on stretching in terms of stretching to increase range of motion. But how you want to increase range of motion is by getting strong in the right places of your body. So in correcting imbalances, to kind of give you an example, I'm going to use an example here of Neil and his client Sheila. I want you guys to look at her right shoulder, okay? So really zone in and look at the top of her right shoulder here while she's going through this movement. Can you see how that shoulder's riding up toward the end of the rep? See how it wakes up like that? So she had some neuromuscular imbalances where she was not able to stabilize her scapula, which would cause at the end of the rep for that shoulder to roll up close to her neck. This is her after working with Neil. Can you guys see how the difference in that shoulder? How it's staying more level? So in making the correction on that, and everyone, Neil, just go ahead and raise your hand there. I mean, everyone, let's give Neil a round of applause for doing that. I'm impressed because I just know, I mean, doing that is something, it takes a tremendous amount of talent, a tremendous amount of a skill set to be able to, because there's not one thing that gets that shoulder back on the thorax, which is the space between your scapula and your rib cage, but it's understanding a sequence of things that have to happen to realign that scapula, which he did a phenomenal job with. But one of the things you want to pay attention to, we have an assessment that actually looks at your joints and it can tell if they're off within a centimeter to make sure that we're minimizing the excessive wear and tear. And the reason I'm not going into detail about correcting muscle imbalances is that our neuromuscular system and our imbalances are unique to us as our thumbprint, because it's an accumulation of every movement you've made your entire life. So everyone in this entire room has got a dramatically different neuromuscular pattern. And so, kind of the science of what I've created or what we do is being able to understand how your Rubik's Cube is twisted. But there's some other principles that we can take. Let's talk about loading. So this one is extremely important. And I say loading is how much mechanical load are we putting on this structure to be able to enhance the structure. So there's a science to this, and it's extremely important that we do it the right way, because if you put too much load on it, you'll create inflammation, right? And that's the last thing we want to do, is to create inflammation. And most people in this room don't have to worry about that issue, right? I don't think I have to worry about walking into the gym and seeing 500 pounds on someone's back doing a squat. But one thing that you want to be cautious of is underloading your body, not giving it enough load. So as we load our bodies, right, if you find the sweet spot, there's a sweet spot to where you're able to significantly grow muscle and bone without tearing the muscle down too much or tearing the structure down too much. If you underload, it's almost an equivalent of you not even working out, or in terms of benefit, you might as well have just stayed at home. Because what happens, remember I told you how our bodies age and our bodies change as we get older? After we get past sexual maturity, we start losing lean muscle mass, which is muscle. We lose about 10% every 7 to 10 years. So our body is doing this. It's declining in terms of our lean muscle mass. So if we're not doing things to stimulate and grow that lean muscle mass, we have to stimulate and grow it just to stay even. Does that make sense as we age? And in a perfect case scenario, which we've done in a ton of cases, is actually get your lean mass to go up. But there's a science in being able to load that. But one of the things that you guys can take away today is, if you're doing a set of 10 reps, you should barely be able to get through rep 9 and 10 in that set, right? So if we're in the gym and we're exercising and we're like, hey, what's going on? How was the tennis match? How did she play? Oh yeah, what kind of skirt was she wearing? Oh, why did she wear that? You're wasting your time, right? This isn't gonna do anything for us. If you get there and you're on set 9, you're like, or rep 9, you're like, oh my gosh, am I gonna be able to get through it? Maybe. Then you're gonna actually have a chance to load yourself to be able to grow muscle tissue. And that's kind of a very watered down simple, but I'm just saying some people here aren't gonna do training, but I want you guys to be able to get a better load of yourself in the gym. And underloading is for me, I own gyms and I own this, and I hate to see people take time out of their day and effort out of their day and not do anything to make their body better. And in some cases, even make their body worse, which is why we do these seminars and why we do these things is for you guys. We have all this amazing equipment that's coming in there, and I want you guys to be able to maximize and get the most benefit out of it. So when you're doing your set of 10 reps, and the reason why I like 10 is if we're doing 2, you can get the load too heavy. If we're doing 30, the load's not gonna be significant enough to be able to create a lean muscle mass change. I'm gonna skip this slide right here and jump to one of the things that's important is there's a law. Like we have Newton's law of gravity. There's a law called Wolff's law. It was done by Julius Wolff, who he determined that he proved that bone grows on imposed demand. Right? So as we apply the right amount of mechanical load to our body, we're actually able to create these things called osteoblasts. An osteoblast is a secretion of protein that actually grows the bone from the inside out. And that's extremely important for people that are having, osteoporosis or osteopenia. We've had a lot of clients that have been osteoporosis and osteopenia that we've actually been able to get to clear bone by properly using mechanical load. We use a DEXA scanner to measure that. Another law that they have, like Newton's law, is something called Davis' law. And Davis' law says that ligaments and soft tissue grow on imposed demand. So what's extremely important as we're doing good workouts, we're working within the parameters of our body. Not only are our muscles growing, but the structures of our ligaments, the structures of our joint, we can actually get those to grow as well. We measure that with what we do we have a DEXA scanner that measures the amount of lean mass and fat mass you have. And one guy that mastered these principles of Wolff's law and Davis' law is this guy named Alexander Zoss, right? And he has probably one of the coolest stories I've ever heard. So this guy was a Russian guy. He was captured by the Austrians in World War I. And he was put into jail, and they looked at him, and they're like, that's a big dude right there. You know what, I'm a little lazy. I don't want to really have to worry about putting him in the cuffs, not the cuffs. We're just going to beat the snot out of this guy. So they beat the snot out of this guy. They broke a ton of bones in this guy. And so he was left in his cell, and he actually rehabbed himself by pulling and using Wolff's law and Davis' law by micro-progressing, trying to pull a little bit harder each day. And what he did was actually, got insanely strong. So when the war would happen, there was a bomb that went off outside of the jail, and all the jailers, all the handlers went to go check on that. He detached the bars from the window in his jail, created a hook, grappled his way down to freedom. True story. And this guy spent the rest of his life doing freak stuff like this. And this is before Photoshop. And this is him, breaking a chain with his neck on his foot. This is him with his mouth holding an iron beam. These are 2 horses pulling him apart. But he's got an amazing book called, The Amazing of Samson. If you read this book, and I read it, and it goes in depth about how he micro-progressed himself, right? And our goal for us is I'm not saying that we need to have a horse over our head, but we want to micro-progress our joints. We want to micro-progress our ligaments. We want to micro-progress our muscles to where we can get them as dense and as strong as possible. And how he did it is if you go too heavy too soon, you're not going to be able to get there doing this. Where I go too hard and all of a sudden I fall down, then I have 2 weeks of repairing. It's having that consistent micro-progression is what's going to be able to get your joints and your ligaments strong. What we do, this is actually Neil with Sheila there, what we do, and what I encourage you guys to do is we do data tracking. So if you're going to work out and you're going to invest time and you're going to go to the gym, bring a notepad with you and write down what you're doing, write down the weight that you're doing, and the next time you're coming in, try to beat that number a little bit each time to micro-progress. The worst thing that you can do is go to the gym and just check in, and you go to the leg extension machine and you're like, what weight did I do last time? Oh, let me just stick it in here, and you're just wasting your time. You're limiting the amount of consistent gain that you're going to have. And in loading your body correctly, you're able to increase lean muscle mass. And this is what 5 pounds of muscle looks like. And lean muscle mass is gold in the body. Like lean muscle mass, there's been so many studies that show that people with high lean muscle mass live longer. Lean muscle mass makes you more resilient to disease. Lean muscle mass, we get this increases your testosterone, which protects your cellular health, which protects your telomeres, which guess what? Protects your health, right? So all these are important. Carly over here in the corner, she actually does something pretty cool where she can actually draw your blood work and look at your testosterone and hormone levels. And she has all natural ways to be able to get those levels balanced. And obviously having balanced hormones protect your cells, which protect your telomeres. So you guys know the rest of the story. She's over there if you guys want to talk to her for any questions afterwards. But another thing that is important in lifting and exercising properly for our health is that if you're working out the way that I'm kind of telling you with the micro-progression, you're going to strengthen your heart. And in strengthening your heart, especially if you're hitting big muscle groups, you're going to force your heart to have to fill these muscles full of blood, which is going to increase your heart health. And what we have is a test, right, or a test that we do to actually measure your heart health. And can you guys see here there's a bunch of squiggly lines, but can you see the blue line and the green line that's straight up and down? The Cleveland Clinic did a study, from 91 to 2014, over 20 years, with 122,000 people. I think it's 22,007 people. And what they found was in this study that the people that had those vertical lines further apart live longer. And those vertical lines it's a biomarker for how healthy your heart is. And this is actually you're able to do that if you're lifting properly these big pieces of tissue that are on your body and filling them up with blood, you're actually able to strengthen your heart. And if you look at this chart here, her before, is actually one of our clients, Marie Vincent. If you see before, how close those vertical bars are, and if you see the after on her, the spacing on that, she's literally, we're scientifically making her body healthier, or making her heart healthier, but you can just see the direct effect that has on that. So, in putting all this together, it's kind of it's a big process, right? It's a journey. And I kind of threw a lot at you guys in this talk. And if you guys are thinking about anything about this, what we're going to do is we're going to set up just a time for you guys to meet with me one-on-one. All of you guys that showed up here, all the guys that took the time to watch this video, and even as some of you guys that are already training with us and already doing that, if you want to schedule time to get on my schedule where I can kind of talk you through some of this stuff in depth. Some of you guys know everyone that came in and did some of the training with us. I meet you initially, but if you guys would like to talk further, I'm definitely available to, be deeper in this journey with you. If you guys are interested in a water ionizer, I get those things at cost. I'll pass my savings to you. I'll give it to you cheaper than anyone. If you guys are interested in the TA65, the same thing. Literally, I don't want to see you guys overpay on this stuff. If you guys are interested in your training, we'll definitely take care of you. But we do these things, and I want to be of service to you guys. And my team wants to be of service to you guys. And we want this health center that we have this, significant investment, all this new equipment. I want to see you guys truly use that to increase the health of your body. And increasing the health of your body means we're doing things that are preventing cellular division, which is going to minimize telomere shortening, which is going to protect the cell. So did that last analogy make sense to you guys? If it did, I kind of did my job tonight up here. So if you guys have questions for Carly, she's over there. Any of my guys in a black shirt, this is my COO, Jeff, right here. What you guys can do, if you want to just schedule and get on my schedule, they all have my calendar. You can schedule a time with me. There's no cost to you. We can meet one-on-one. I can talk about your goals. I can talk about, there's a lot of stuff that we covered here, but trying to create a plan that's tailored for you, or if it's just answering some questions that you may have. But I appreciate you guys taking the time that you guys did today, to take time and to meet with us. And we're going to have a series of these coming on just to kind of be informative and invest in you. Fred Petito, have you got a question?
Excluding your cardio machines, how many different types of machines do you have at the Apex facility?
At my facility?
Different types of machines.
Ooh, Fred, you're busting me here. A lot. A lot. I've got over $2 million of equipment in there.
Given the lot of machines that you have, has there been a selection process as to what you're bringing over here?
Absolutely. So Fred's asking, I've got 40,000 square feet over there. I got $2 million of equipment. It looks like a sea of stuff. And obviously, we know the fitness center here cannot have a sea of stuff. But every single piece in there was handpicked by me. Every single piece in there is exactly what we need for you guys to be able to get optimal healthy. So, and then part of it too is some of the machines that I have in my big facility, I might have 3 of them. Where here we only have 1. But I knew that we had limited space. There isn't one bad piece in there, and we have more than enough to be able to shape your body. Great question. Any more questions? Yes.
How late will the facility be open at night?
As late as we need it to be. So what I say by that is the current hours, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, whatever.
I'm trying to remember too. You're talking about this facility here?
This facility here.
I want to say right now, it's 8 p.m., but we're also working on putting a key fob system in place that would allow you to have access to it at any point.
So, like I said, we're having a key fob system that's going to have, right now anybody can just walk in anytime. We're shutting that down where you're going to have a key fob, a Heathrow key fob that's going to ding you in. And obviously, too, we don't want the place being overcrowded with people that aren't members. So all that's going to be policed. But a better question or a better answer to your question is, if there's a demand for people to show up to stay later, we'll adjust. Because ultimately, we're here to serve you guys and here to meet the need of this demographic. If we need to open up earlier, we'll do that too. It's going to be a feedback process with us working with you guys to get everything what it needs to be. Any more questions? Great. Thank you guys so much for coming out tonight.